Well, hi everybody. So today I'll be going over the P-38 Lightning by FlyingIron simulations. I'll show you how to start it up, how to take it off, how to land it, maybe a couple of things that you probably need to watch out for. And then I'll do a quick review on it, and that'll be it for today. So let's hop in the cockpit and get started. Okay, well here we are in the cockpit. This is pretty much it. Now before I start the P-38 up, I'm going to go through the tablet and the instrument panel real quick. So we'll go through the tablet first. To access that, you click up here on the kind of left side of the cockpit. You can also access it by clicking on the lower left side of the seat. Now, it's much easier to get it up there though. So in here you have a number of tabs. You have checklists, which contains all your checklists, V-speeds, live data, loadout menu, which this is where you would add your drop tanks or remove your drop tanks. This only works if you're on the ground, so you can't add them when you're in the air. Not really sure why you would want to, but you can't. So you have an autopilot. Now I'll explain this when we get in the air. You have the settings tab here. This contains your cockpit configuration, realism settings, tablet preferences, and ground services. Cockpit configuration has GPS, gun sight, and yoke in it, so you can toggle all of these on or off. Now your GPS unit pops up here on the sort of like top right side of your instrument panel. You can also toggle this by clicking on the flaps warning label here, and it'll toggle it on and off. I'm going to leave it off because I'm not going to use it. We're also going to turn the yoke off. Now these settings are saved in between flights, so if you turn the yoke off and you exit the flight and then you come back to it, the next time you start it up, the yoke will already be off. Now under realism settings, you have engine damage and hypoxia. You can toggle these on and off. Engine damage is exactly what it sounds like. You can, overheat or overstress the motor and everything. So, and then hypoxia. As far as I know, this is the only plane in Microsoft Flight Simulator that has this feature. And how it works is that if you go above 12,000 feet and you haven't turned your oxygen on, you will lose the ability to hear. Now, I'm not sure if you eventually black out or not. I didn't take it that far when it happened to me, so I don't really know. If you do pass out, that's kind of cool though. And then you have the tablet preferences, which is just the brightness of the tablet. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that. Now up here in the upper left-hand corner of your instrument panel, you have your magnetic compass and your directional gyro. Now this sort of transparent rectangle here on the magnetic compass seems to be something that happened after Sim Update 7. So I kind of expect it to be fixed pretty soon. FlyingIron is usually pretty timely in their fixes. So we'll move down here to the left-hand corner of the instrument panel, and you have your reserve tanks fuel gauge and your main tanks fuel gauge. Now you have wing tanks, drop tanks, reserve tanks, and main tanks. Only the reserve and the main tanks have gauges. The wing tanks have this sort of little deal over here, and when you get down to 10 minutes worth of fuel, these two lights will light up. The drop tanks only have the ability to see their fuel level in the tablet, so you'll have to bring the tablet up to see that. And you have the altimeter here, airspeed indicator, and hydraulic pressure gauge. This is your landing light indicator. Now this only lights up when the landing gear are in transition, so if it's off, the landing gear are down or they're up. So that's that. Then you have a attitude indicator here in the center, a slip indicator, and a climb indicator. On the right side, you have your manifold pressure gauge, your RPM gauge, your oil and fuel pressure gauges, and at the top of those gauges you have your oil temperature. These are your amp meters. On the far right, you have your coolant temperature gauge and your carburetor air temperature gauge. And then we'll move over here to the left side. Now on the left side of your seat here, you have your fuel pump switches, and you'll see these better when I actually turn the plane on. And then you have your tank valves here. So up here we have, well, I guess we'll start here. You have your landing gear lever here, and you have your propeller pitch levers here, throttle levers here, and mixture levers up here. You have your pitch trim wheel here, and on the center on the floor is where your oxygen regulator is. So if you have turned epoxy on and you don't want to suffer any effects from it, you're going to want to turn this little red knob. And when you do, this little thing over here will start blinking, and this means is that the valve is open and you have oxygen flow. So, you know, I mean, if you want to find out if you do black out, just don't turn this on. So below the regulator you have your rudder trim, and then on the right side here you have your flaps lever, your transponder, and your radio. And that is pretty much it for everything you need to know about the P-38. So I'll go ahead and start it up here. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is engage the parking brake. It is off by default, and the P-38 will want to roll once you get the engine started, so go ahead and engage that. Then we'll come up here and we'll turn the battery on. And we'll move over here to the left side and turn the main fuel pumps on. And then we'll turn the emergency fuel pumps on. Now, the emergency fuel pumps, as far as I can tell, aren't necessary unless you're going to climb above 10,000 feet. If you do climb above 10,000 feet, the engine will kind of sputter and die. Or well, I guess it won't die, but it'll sputter, and you won't have enough power to keep climbing above 10,000. So turn those on if you're planning on doing that. We'll come up here to the tank valves, and we'll turn these on to reserve. Now, if you don't have the key binding set up to select these, then using the mouse wheel is much easier than clicking on them. So we're going to want to come up here and make sure the mixture is set to cutoff and the propeller pitch is set at full. You're going to want to crack your throttle a little bit, and I've found that as long as you kind of get the lever here to line up a little bit below the C, that you're pretty much good to go. So we'll come up here and then we'll flip the master magneto switch on. Now the magnetos for the left and the right engine by default are already set to both. So all you have to do is turn the master magneto switch on. We'll turn the generators on. And then we'll need to prime the engine before we can start it. So the two primers are right here. And then you have the left and the right energizer on this switch, and the left or the right starter on this switch. Now the manual is going to tell you to prime the engine for a certain number of seconds depending upon what temperature you're at. I find that doesn't work very well, so I click them 3 times and it seems to work all 100% of the time. So we'll just do what I normally do, and it works. So we'll click the left primer 3 times. We'll hold the left energizer forward. We're going to do this for about 4 seconds. Really what you're trying to do is just make sure that you can get to the left starter before the propeller stops spinning. So we got the left engine started, so we'll repeat the same process for the right engine. Hold the right energizer down, and then hold the right starter down. Alright. Now I'm going to close the canopy up here because it gets a little noisy. So to do that, you just click on the red bar up here. We'll go ahead and lock it. Now you do want to lock it. If you don't lock it while you're flying around, the top of the canopy will fly off. So, alright. Well, now that we've got both engines started, next thing we're going to want to do is turn on the intercooler flaps, or well, at least turn them to auto. And then the coolant flaps you'll also want to turn to auto. Go ahead and turn the pitot heat on just because we're here. Now the oil cooler flaps are already set to automatic, so you don't have to mess with these. Then we'll turn the compass power on, and then you have wing lights and tail lights and your landing light. The wing and tail lights have two settings, which are bright and dim, so we're just going to go ahead and turn them on to bright. And we'll go ahead and turn the landing light on. And that's it. We've got the P-38 started, so go ahead and run out to the runway here and then take it off. Alright, well, here we are at the end of the runway. I'm going to go through something here real quick before we take off. 80 miles an hour is the rotation speed for the P-38, and kind of because of the camera angle and the bezel of the airspeed indicator here, all of the hash marks between 50 and 100 are obscured. So 80 miles an hour is right where this bolt is. So when the needle gets to this bolt, that's where you want to begin rotation. And that's pretty much it. So we'll go ahead here and take off. Now you're not going to need any flaps for takeoff. The P-38 pretty much does just kind of like to get up and go. Even on short runways, you won't really need any flaps. This runway is only about 2,500 feet long, and I'll be really amazed if I don't get off the ground before halfway. But I'll go ahead here and throttle it up and take off. Now it's not a squirrely plane, so you're not going to have to worry about anything really on takeoff or landing. You should lift off at about 94. I don't think I ever hit 94, but that's not a big deal if you don't. If you are flying this with engine damage on, you're going to want to leave your manifold pressure at about 44 is what the manual says. I've found that you can take it up to about 4,800, 48, and it'll be fine. Your RPMs, though, you need to keep at 3,000. And a couple things about flying the P-38 is stall speed for the P-38 with the flaps up is 94 miles an hour, and with them down, it's 69. So it can fly pretty slow. But the other thing is with the drop tanks on, it is a little heavy, so you're probably going to have to trim the nose up. Now, if you're not flying with drop tanks on, this thing really does like to climb, so you'll probably need to trim it down a little bit. And then you will probably need to use the dive brakes in this plane, and they are mapped to whatever your spoilers are set up to in the game. You really will need them. It might not be completely impossible to pull out of a high-speed dive, but it will be difficult, and probably depending upon your altitude, it might actually be impossible. So, keep that in mind. But other than that, we'll go through the autopilot here real quick, and then I'll show you how to drop the drop tanks. Now, the autopilot is incredibly simple. All you have to do is hit the power button here, hit the heading button, and hit the altitude button, and it will hold all this. It seems to take it a minute to kind of situate the altitude, but once it does, it does a really good job of holding everything. So now we'll drop the drop tanks. So you want to come over here to the left side of your cockpit in this box here with bombs or tanks written on the top of it. You're going to want to flip these two switches, then these two lights should be red, and then flip this switch. And after you've done that, you you want to press left control, left shift, and D, and it will drop the drop tanks. If you've changed the key binding for fuel dump, then you'll need to press whatever that is, but that is the key bind for fuel dump. And so we'll go ahead and flip all these off and turn the autopilot off and come back in for a landing. Now you will need to be below 176 miles an hour to put your gear down, and you'll need to put your flaps all the way down. Now with the flaps down and the gear down, the P-38 is pretty hard to keep in the air, so you're going to need a lot of power to keep it from falling out of the sky. So you'll need the manifold pressure to be about 45, 44, 45, you're probably good, and then you want to back the propeller pitch, or the RPM down here to about 2,600. Now you should come in at about 120 miles an hour. We're going a little fast, so we'll see how this goes. It is pretty good about just kind of landing itself, so once you kind of get over the runway, you can just reduce the throttle and it'll pretty much set itself down. I think we hit Bob, but oh well. So that is how you take off and land the P-38. So we'll go ahead and go into the review part of this, and that'll be it for today. Alrighty, well, I'm going to start here by saying if you're thinking of purchasing the P-38, you can pick it up from FlyingIronSimulations.com. It's about $33. I don't think it's overpriced. I mean, I bought it. I've been enjoying it, so it's kind of up to you if you want to spend the money. If you do buy it, though, I would buy it from Flying Iron's website and not from the Microsoft Flight Simulator Marketplace. At least as far as the time of recording this, it's not even available in the marketplace, so you know, that's that. But anyway, the reason is basically because for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to render weapons on the aircraft, and I mean, if that's not a big deal to you, then you know, kind of disregard this. But I don't know why they do that, but they do. So anything that seems to come out from the marketplace doesn't seem to have weapons. So that's why you buy it from their website, seller's website, and then you don't have that problem. That was kind of an aside. Anyway, overall, I think the P-38 is fantastic. Any issues I did have with it were fixed with update 1.0.1. They were pretty minor issues in the first place anyway. It comes with 9 liveries. The texture quality of all of them is really good. The wear and the tear that's on the plane, both the exterior and the interior, I think adds some character that I always kind of appreciate with planes. And the polished aluminum ones really do look great. The engine damage and hypoxia are pretty neat features, I think, both of which you can turn off if you prefer not to deal with them. The sound quality is a real high point for the P-38. The engine startup sounds fantastic, and the engines themselves sound great. But it's not just the engines either, like sort of the overall sound of the plane, like sort of the miscellaneous things that go on sound really good. It's a fun plane to fly. It's also not that difficult to fly. It's reasonably aerobatic. It's like no extra, but it's still pretty fun to fly. And you know, if you just want to fly it from point A to point B, it's good for that too. You can pretty much just point it in whatever direction you want it to go, and it'll go. You also have that autopilot if you don't want to fly it yourself. That's pretty much going to be it for today. So for y'all that are still here, thanks for watching, and I hope there's a next time.